Bueno, muy buenos días.
Good morning, everyone.
Un agradecimiento
And I would like to really thank Mark
por la cortesía de
for the courtesy of having come to Costa Rica to invite us to participate
Symposium, igual
in this
a
symposium,
Cordón.
and also to Malady Cordon, also a great friend of mine, and also to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and to BYU for having invited us.
Está el padre por acá, pero quiero hacer una
And
confesión
the
pública.
father is not here, but I'd like to make a public confession.
Cuando yo estuve,
When
sí,
when I was
con el padre argentino.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, yeah, with the
Varios
Argentinian priest,
sacerdotes.
because there's several priests here.
Cuando
When
asumí la presidencia
I
del Congreso de Costa Rica,
became a member of the
importante de la nación,
presidency of the Congress of Costa Rica, one of the most important tasks was to invite people in the country to make a report. And the main characteristic that they said of me was that they never thought that I would even
último vocal
become
de la junta
the
directiva de clase en la escuela, porque la verdad es que
second last
caracterizaba en la
person in my class in school because
siempre me pusieran
I was always really nervous of speaking in public when I was a child, and so I'd like to confess to all of you that
momento me sigue
I
persiguiendo esa
I still have this fear of
pero
public
bueno, y con las
speaking,
canciones
but at least with the songs, and also because I love folklore, and so that has filled me with a lot of courage. And I would like to mention two ideas
alguna medida
that
van a orientar esta presentación
are what are going
y fueron
to
mencionadas precisamente en el acto inaugural,
what this presentation is going to be about. And in the
que decía
inaugural address by some Africans, they said, how does religious freedom contribute to societal stability?
y luego qué podemos hacer
And
para
what
continuar
can we do
promoviendo la
to
libertad
continue to promote
religiosa.
religious freedom?
Quisiera decir que
I would like
de los
to
cuatro
say
puntos que
that
voy a desarrollar
among the 3 or 4 points that I'm going to talk about, one has to do with
amplia que se hizo
a more extensive explanation of what was made yesterday by the presenters from Costa Rica,
las razones de la
and the
confidencialidad del
reasons
Estado
for
costarricense.
why there's confidentiality in the Costa Rican state. And another topic is the role of the Catholic Church in terms of conflict resolution in Costa Rica. And a third topic that I'd like to at least explain briefly is an orientation of the new order among religious groups and emerging groups that have traditions that are different from those that traditionally have existed in Costa Rica. And that's the framework that we have in Costa Rica to discuss the religious freedom
También un poquito quiero mencionar
bill. And I'd also like to talk about what has been discussed between the Catholic Church and evangelical groups. Things that are being discussed that are very sensible. And then also the action of church in terms of social conflicts in Central America. I'd like to briefly mention what especially the Catholic Church has discussed in this area in terms of social conflicts.
Se me fue la. Acá está.
Okay, here it is.
Quiero mencionar
I would like to mention, with regard to what has been very typical among everything that's been discussed among the Costa Rica has a history that is similar to other Latin American countries. Religious tolerance is something that is deeply entrenched in Costa Rica. Currently, there are more than 80 religions as a result of immigration into the country. And this statement might be a little bit contradictory to what the conflicts that we talked about yesterday, but I'd like to say that there is no such contradiction. The Costa Rican people, 95% of Costa Ricans are tolerant in the area in terms of religion, and the link between the church and the society. And sorry, I'd like to say that this tolerance has not always existed during the colonial era when the Spanish conquistadors came. Like in the rest of Latin America, the Catholic religion was the dominating and ruling religion. But nowadays in society, priests can be directors in society, and this was also mentioned by other speakers, especially by the priests served as teachers, as doctors, as nurses, so they were everything in the communities. When Costa Rica became independent, in the case of Central America, it was an independence throughout the Central American isthmus. The Catholic Church was able to perpetuate its ideas, but its power and influence became weaker, and this led to a process of adaptation of a new reality in order to recover some of the power that it had previously. There were concepts of liberalism that were introduced. There were young people who studied in Europe, and they began to have a lot of doubts about traditional religion. And the homogeny that had existed under the Catholic Church began to go away. And this was also expressed in the Constitution and in the legal framework. And although there have been some variations over time, and until the present day, the religious nature of the Catholic Church in Costa Rica has been maintained. For instance, in Article 75 of the Costa Rican Constitution says specifically that the Roman Catholic religion is the state religion, which contributes to the freedom of practicing other religions that are not opposed to good customs and morals. And nowadays, Christianity is the most prevalent religion in Costa Rica. And most people are Catholic. And
los religiosos en el Parlamento,
religious people in Parliament religious people in the Costa Rican Parliament. Since the 1990s, the political parties that have a religious definition or identity have a very important participation, specifically the evangelical political parties. Currently, there are three political parties, such as the Restoration, and also the Democratic Christian Alliance. They have congressmen in the Costa Rican Parliament, and currently the Parliament has 4 representatives from those political parties, but there's also a political party that was able to incorporate 2 former Catholic priests, and this is actually a leftist party, and the current government began its administration with a minister, a Lutheran bishop, and one of the main government agencies also has a Catholic priest. Logically, this shows something that's very different in terms of the participation of the various churches in the Costa Rican Parliament. Now, before I go on to the second topic, which has to do with the participation of the church in the different social conflicts, I would like to mention that Costa Rica has been a country that over time has an extensive democratic and social stability tradition, and this tradition is also seen in the Alternative Dispute Resolution or Conflict Resolution Act. There are a couple of examples I'd like to mention where the church has participated openly and strongly in resolving some of the conflicts in Costa Rica. In 2000, in fact, a legal bill was approved that sought to improve public services such as electricity and telecommunications so that they could become privatized, and as a result, there is enormous social mobilization resulting in the consequences you can imagine. You can see the picture. There were road closures, there were protests among the population, and in fact, the Catholic Church
se presentara una o se creara una comisión facilitadora y
caused for a facilitating commission to be created, and also with participation of the Catholic Church and other groups, and this situation was then resolved. And this is a very clear example where the church intervenes directly in a social conflict. And other conflicts include one that was very interesting and which was also resonated considerably at an international level. This had to do with the free trade agreement with the United States, where the Catholic Church took a position which was interesting. It was a position where some pastors were against and some were in favor, and the Catholic Church lost the neutrality that it had traditionally had in conflict resolution. So all it was able to do was to and so the free trade agreement was proposed through a public consultation so that through a referendum it could be approved or a decision could be made with regard to the future of this legal bill. The Catholic Church also, since it had lost its legitimacy, what the bishops did eventually was to call upon the population, upon the citizens, in order to participate widely in the referendum. And so the Catholic Church steps aside, but calls upon the citizens to participate in that decision. With regard to the context within which our country is currently, and with the new relationships between the citizens and the political power and religion, I would like to tell you that some of the topics that are being discussed today openly and that have begun to show some distancing between the church and the different groups and also the political power itself. These are topics that some of which are now in the Costa Rican parliament, such as civil societies, and also some countries don't have this type of legislation in terms of civil unions, also religious freedom, sex education, and abortion. One topic that I find important that has to do with tolerance in Costa Rica, and perhaps I'll mention in just a minute, but there was one extraordinary case that took place about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, where in Costa Rica, August 2nd is a very important holiday, which has to do with the celebration of the Virgin of the Angels, which is the most important Catholic holiday in Costa Rica, where about 1 million people walk in a procession toward the Los Angeles Basilica. And on August 2nd, the 12th of August, there's a very important celebration where all the government people participate and also the Catholic leadership. And so, well, on that day, 2 years ago, the Catholic Church requested the government to make a confession of faith, and what they were seeking were two people. One, ask God for forgiveness for the acts that we hadn't made. Back then, I was the president of parliament. So to ask forgiveness for the acts that had a negative impact on society, and to put in God's hands all decisions that we were making. Because of that decision and that act, we were sent to court, and we spent a lot of time with the lawyers trying to defend ourselves because of a minority representative who had what they called yesterday heterophobia against those who profess a faith. And in Central America, briefly, and I think that we are running out of time, the Catholic Church has had a very important role in terms of conflict resolution in Central America. This has been mentioned on many occasions, such as in Honduras, Panama, Guatemala, and El Salvador during the conflicts in the 70s and 80s, where they where the blood of pastors was spilled in terms of civil war in Central America, and so they were trying to resolve political conflicts in Central America. And this is where the Catholic Church especially has participated in Costa Rica. And I believe that this answers the original question, or the question that was made during the opening of this symposium, of how religion tries to help society resolve conflicts. Thank you very much and have a good day.